This is very intimidating and very embarrassing. When I proposed this subject, I had imagined talking to a room full of die-hard APL bastards who are convinced that they can do everything that they need to do in APL. And as I look around, I see a distinguished audience of subtle and experienced multi-skilled programmers. And it does occur to me that the entire burden of my small topic might be dispensed with through an offhand remark at the bar.
I'm still a die-hard.
God bless some skulls. So let me do a little reality check. Is there anyone here who doesn't actually already know perfectly well what XML is? Just stick your hand up if you actually don't know.
Perfectly well.
Two or three. Keep your hands up for a moment there, and add your hands up if you do kind of know what it is, but you've never actually done anything with it. Okay, I'm finding myself a little bit. Thank you. I'm finding myself a little bit encouraged here, but I'm still going to see if I can go for an early close, like a salesman, close, and see if I can dispense with this quite quickly, as our time here is rare and precious. So here's an example of what some XML is. For those of you who didn't feel confident that you knew what it is, it's a method, it's a way in a flat text file of using markup to combine data and its structure.
Did you have one of those little points?
Then I'll point. It says here this is XML, this thing is a quiz, here's a question, there's the end of the question, there's an answer.
Oh, she knows I was admiring her so much.
This is really started. And there's the answer at the end of the answer, and for those of you who, being in the heady heights of HTML, there's a comment at the end of the quiz. So a common comment I hear from APLers about this is, well, what's so special about a bunch of angle brackets and tags? What can I do with that? It's good for data exchange. You can see from the simple example that it raises the prospect of data structures that are self-documented, so you don't need another document to tell you what to use. Because it works on text files, it's platform independent. You can pass them from Macs to Windows machines. It offers language independence because XML is defined within Unicode, so you can have just about anything that you can write can go into an XML document. And XML dearly, dearly, dearly hopes to be future-proof. That is, you'll never need to discard this format and replace it with something else. It's used in publishing, it's used in web services, where you get an application to do something through the internet. EDI is a nearly disappeared term for electronic data interchange, where very different applications exchange data and transactions. And these days it's used as the native format for Microsoft Office documents. So in theory, if you have an XML parser, you can read XML documents, you can pull stuff out of a Word or Excel spreadsheet. The basic trick of XML is very, very simple. There's the data and its data structure marked up in some language you've invented. There's something very mysterious called a style sheet, which is something between a presentation style sheet and a data query, which will take your XML document and transform it into another XML document or a text file or HTML or something. And here's an example. This is in fact from the previous issue of Vector 23.4, yes, volume 23. and you can get a sense of how the whole thing is working here. Vector 23.4 was produced that way. The XML got run through style sheets, which produced something else, which went into a formatter and produced PDF, which went to the printers. That something else which got produced was something called an XSL formatting object, so Dyalog APL, in which you can see the text of a vector article marked up with here. We could call this a domain-specific language about arranging stuff on a page. And that finally became the vector that we printed and displayed. If I took this Microsoft Word presentation file and rename it with the extension zip, and then extract the files from it, I get a folder like that. And if I look inside the folder, I'll find various folders and XML documents inside those other XML documents, and you could go and dig around in this way and find everything that's included in the document, in the presentation or a spreadsheet. So the key things about this that I want to draw your attention to. It's a representation from non-tabular data. It's got very powerful query facilities. It's got very powerful presentation facilities. Being able to do fine typesetting straight out of your data structure is really quite something. But the question that I proposed for my talk here today is of what interest is this to the APL program who's doing lightweight application development and wants to be able to do things quickly, lightly, and be nimble. Does this have any use for us at all? And I proposed that we are working within an environment which looks something like this. Our APL programs take input from sources like Excel, our DBMS, or through our custom GUI user interfaces. We keep our persistent data either in a relational database, e-files, data files, or where it doesn't fit conveniently into any of those good old APL component files. We produce output for our users who no longer seem to be quite satisfied with that type of typey stuff that came out in the session. We produce output in the form of Excel documents, Word documents, and HTML pages. And if we want a PDF, we can pick that up from Word. Does this look like a familiar world? Have I left anything important out? Okay, we're working in that world then. Oh, okay, so from what I've told you already, where would XML go? Come on. Chris? At the top, like as an input, I'm going to be given XML files to read, get used to it. Yeah. And as output, give me okay, yeah. In the middle anywhere?
Sort over on the right-hand side, so knock out all those proprietary formats.
Oh, right, okay. Yes. Something like this. And you wouldn't be surprised, son, to see that I've got the XSL in there, because if we've got our data neatly organized in APL files, we can do a lot of our queries and presentations straight with XSL. We don't need to do custom programming in APL to read that, where we can just apply a style sheet, rip the HTML right out, and stuff out to PDF and so forth. This is the point in the story at which the diehard APL bastard says, surely I don't need to do that, I can manage without that, particularly the XSL. And I think there are good reasons. So the reasons for considering an architecture like this is that if I'm storing XML here, other processes can read it. I can share that. That could make me open. That could bind to something. As Simon says, sooner or later, no, it was you, Chris. Sooner or later, I'm going to need to read the XML anywhere. I might as well get on with it. XML is cool. My clients will like that I'm using it, and they will feel more confidence in my work if they can see I'm using XML. I see nods all around the room. It's bollocks, but it really provides you some support. And related to that, I will get more work if I have XML on my resume. So these, I would say, are sensible, but not entirely compelling reasons for using XML. Here's a seriously persuasive reason not to do it. I understand, Brent. Thank you. That was good. I'm not quite ready for that reason. So I said we could look inside a Microsoft Word document. If you do it, you will see XML that looks like this. It is seriously verbose, seriously ugly. It does lay out the document according to what they call a schema, a plan for the language and where everything goes and how it's described. But my goodness, you would hate to have to master that schema and understand it. In fact, the Microsoft Word XML and the Microsoft Office XML schema, formal description of how they use XML runs to 4,000 pages. So this is a very good reason not to play this game. If you want to be lightweight and to move fast, it's like you do not want to be working with something like this. Another good reason for staying right away from XML is you're going to buy books like this and start reading them, and they are a non-trivial learning curve. This is not like picking up a little HTML and building around in the text editor. You will spend some serious time learning XML and particularly the style sheet language. We have an array of hope. I think it's coming, I may hear more about this later from Morton and from Richard. How to read an XML document without knowing any XML. A quad XML facility idea is mooted, which will deliver you the contents of an XML document, just in a familiar array in your workspace, so you don't need to know any of that stuff. So that would handle the problem you spoke of, Chris. Somebody's given me an XML document, I need to get stuff out of it, just dump it into the workspace, I won't be able to make sense out of it. I want to point at a different, possibly persuasive reason, one which might get you to consider using XML as part of your lightweight developer's toolkit. I'm going to point at two places here, start as well, because I know I was going to have it. Custom GUI and the DBMS. And in my world, you may be more skilled with these tools than I am, but in my world, these are kind of choke points. They tend to slow me down in my development because they are a little laborious to work with, and when I change my ideas about how the data should be organized, these are the things which I find slow to change. I find the GUI is not just GUI, but sticky. It raises the cost of change in data relationships. And reorganizing the relational database when you're halfway through development can be a serious pain in the butt. The last project I worked on with DBMS, one of the early things we developed was a script, which was just like an APL script, which was just regenerate the whole database from scratch. And over again throughout development, we just trashed the database and regenerated it from an external description. We're fortunate to have that. You also have with an DBMS platform issues, issues for keeping multiple versions of the data representing different sets of assumptions, access controls. the DBMS in my world is a relatively heavyweight tool with which to do the first stages of development. So here's my possibly persuasive reason. Could I, at least in the initial stages of development, when I'm still being exploratory and I really want to be right on my feet, could I get away with this? And you can see that if I could, this would buy me quite a lot of nimbleness. Yeah. So there's three key insights which this rests on. The first is, some of you will have heard me talk in the past about working with embedded domain-specific languages, where the APL source code is framed in terms that my users can understand, so we can collaborate on the program, on the business logic. This is an analogous issue where if you write the data structures in a way where the user can also collaborate with the model. I'll show you shortly what I mean by that also. The second insight is drawn from the same experience with collaborating on the source code with the users. If the source code has sufficient semantic density, the number of the terms, if when a user, my domain expert, looks at my source code and he sees his own language in there, he will work with me on it, we'll collaborate. So somehow I can see this is about my problem and I will study it. If the proportion of terms which are not in his vocabulary rises above some quite small threshold, then the user just tune out. This is obviously programming stuff I'm not expected to understand. So how do I do this? So semantic density is a key enabling factor here. And the third insight is that a text editor is no harder for somebody to learn than the custom GUI which you've written for them to edit and manipulate the data structures. It's an awful lot faster to deliver. Some examples. In these examples, I'm going to ask you to overlook two key things. I didn't do these things while I was building APL applications. I used them in web applications. For purposes of this discussion, that is completely irrelevant. Please don't get hooked by that. I also, en route to this, acquired and used some XSL skills, but that's not the point. So please don't get distracted by that and think that this isn't relevant to you. It's a lightweight development. The first one was the first example is an application I did for my friend Anne Tupker, who is a wine importer and wine consultant and wine writer. She's a former magazine editor. Used to work at Reader's Digest. She's accustomed to editing things carefully, paying attention to detail. Having worked on Reader's Digest's internal system, she had no trouble at all handling a text editor, but otherwise has minimal computer skills, just like an average member of the population. She produces a quarterly wine list, which goes up on a website, contains descriptions of the wines, prices, and the same thing also goes out as a printed wine list. And as you can see, it is typeset to a nice standard. This is what the source looks like. So 4 times a year, she sends me a new version of XML document, which she maintains in a text editor. So that's the surprising thing. That usually gets me some raised eyebrows. I have a non-technical user who's maintaining a non-trivial XML document in a text editor. So,
does she have some means of validating it before sending it to you?
She does, but she doesn't use it. Good question. So what would you predict from that situation? I tell her to drop the stuff into a Firefox browser and tell her if it's well formed.
You get some errors.
Yes. Does the distinction between valid and well-formed mean something to you? No, okay. So let's not get into that. It's not particularly relevant today. But one of the things about an XML document, unlike HTML, if you've worked with that, is you actually have to close the tags. It's all got to be tidy and well-structured. HTML lets you get a bit loose with that, but XML, you have to close the tags. And that's to make it easier for the parsers so they can be quick. And basically, if you don't close the tags, the entire XML process just chokes. So Anne sends me a document 4 times a year without closing it. So what do you think I do? Close it. It's 4 times a year. That's an appropriate solution for this business. If she was doing it every week, I'd find some other solution.
It's kind of interesting. How do you know where to close it? It sounds like it's pretty easy.
It is easy. So you drop it into Firefox, it says the line it chokes on.
So you can automatically speed it up.
No, I don't think so. No, she makes different kinds of mistakes. Sometimes she leaves off the closing tag. The most recent one is that she repeats the opening tag instead.
Or misspelled.
Or misspells it. Yeah, that one also much.
You have a lot of interpretation.
Yes, yeah, that does help, and I encourage her to maintain indentation. So that's a very good point. As you can see, I think even from this fairly simple fragment, that you can write this in such a way the errors tend to stand out, and this is very much like writing your code in such a way that you can stare the bugs out. Clarity in the code source, clarity in the data source. It's the same principle. Here's my second example. It's the London Bullion Market Association. They publish market prices for gold and other precious metals. Also the good delivery criteria, which is what you need to know if you're in that business and somebody offers you a gold bar for sale. If you want to know, is this a real one? They have a few staff at the organisation in the city, but those staff they're not technical, but they are intimate with the data. That's the front page of their website. Here's a fragment from their page with the good delivery specifications. This is how you tell how, let's see, this is the gold list. So this is how you tell whether a gold bar from a Chinese refiner is the real thing. There's a more elaborate professional version of this page, which includes some pictures of the marks and so forth. And the gold list, again, is an XML document, which, again, because of the high semantic density, the users are able to just maintain themselves in a text editor. This is their the analysts' forecast page. Every year they ask the analysts in the precious metals market what they think is going to happen with prices each year, their highs, lows, average forecasts, a little bit of commentary, and there's a forecast for each of the metals that the analyst is dealing in, and all those go into a document from which this page is derived. And again, the documents made up each year by the users in the text editor. So,
Same question I had last time, but the difference is that one's publishing a wine list, and the other's publishing some important information about gold that people are going to rely on. So, do they send you something that has errors in it? And if it does, now what do you do?
no, when I helped them set this up, my expectation was that I would be kind of assisting them with the difficult bits. And that was kind of like a business decision. You know, you can fairly cheaply solve 80-90% of the problem. Then automating the whole thing, that gets really expensive. So my expectation was that for the last bits, when we have problems with this, they just use a few hours of my time every year to get that sorted. Actually, they've got the 2009 forecast up here. They did the whole thing themselves. Surprised me. But I would draw attention to the consideration of the economics there. It makes sense economically for them to use a few hours of my time rather than for me to automate the problem. Canberra is a small academic research institution. They have a directory on their website of their speakers, and it's very richly structured. It's references there to the Wikipedia article, talks they've given, papers they've presented, pictures and so on. Again, the whole directory is held and edited in the text editor. I included this one because the XML is Japanese script. I can't maintain that one at all. Oh, and yes, of course, vector as well. That's our consultants directory. And one of the nice things about this is that when our consultants are free to go offline, we can't find their websites or get an answer from their email, we just put in comment marks and comment out that part of the XML. Okay, so another reminder, please forget that these were web applications. Remember that the users maintain the data themselves. They do it just using text editors, which you can supply free. It works because the XML documents are sensitive. So that should possibly persuade you reason consider using XML and saving yourself the work on the GUI and database management system. I'm done. Take questions. Devin.
My experience with XML was we had an analytic engine which took big tables of numbers, shot out big tables of numbers, and then probably because they thought it was cool, they turned these nice orthogonal, homogeneous tables into XML. And
What was the last thing?
they turned these nice simple tables which put in a CSV file into this XML.
Oh, right.
And I had to write, fortunately Jay has an XML parsing thing, and I was able to relatively quickly extract the table back.
Yes.
But it occurs to me XML is a general, you can define formats, and you could define, I think, a tabular numeric format, but without so much wrapper around it. Just put the wrapper around the whole table instead of around each single column. You know if that's possible?
Actually did it in this example. In this part of the XML, and I want to pick up on something in your question here. The XML that I used here, which defines folder, type, or description, I didn't look this up anywhere. I didn't go and find an XML for this problem. I just made it up as I went along. And I kept throwing things in there until I had all the pieces that I needed.
So you just made up your format and see
Yeah. The XML is made to suit the problem, which is a fairly simple one, so there's really not much to it. If you had a very complicated application, designing the XML would be a bigger and more demanding job. But for something simple, lightweight like this, what you have? Let's have a look. We'll have this file describe a folder, it's going to need a title, we need a language attribute just so you know which language it's in. And down here, we have an element called the thumbs, which defines a table. And it's got successive rows and lists of numbers here which match the IDs of individual images. So that's allowed my user to specify how she wanted the thumbnails arranged.
So I could define, I could just drop the CSV file right in there and define tables.
I'll just put a tag around a table, CSV or comma, and each. You want to mark each row, I guess, as a row.
You do one.
You would.
Could that be handled by the stop?
Sorry, just thinking about that. I think there are some kind of senior XML tricks you can do with that by defining the table element, which is unparsed character data, which would maybe pull that trick off and just about paste almost anything into an XML.
The nice thing about it is that it is kind of readable.
Yes.
Yeah, but turning an array into each individual tag to a bunch of scalars doesn't make it work.
No, and turning a table and tagging it up like that is like it's just painful. We all know what HTML tags look like. That.
But the other thing is, if it's a rectangular table, you don't have to have a tag for every row. You could just have an attribute at the start of the tag saying what the dimension were, and then black the text out.
Can you do that? Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you know more about XML than I do.
No.
Which is not a huge one.
When you talk about quad XML, one of the things we can do is do exactly that.
Right. I hope we'll hear more about that.
Not from me, in the bar.
Either.
The thing is not to be put off by if you happen to dive into a large XML file, like the business one we had early on. No one here reads raw component files by diving into the source code.
Right.
We have quad read, and that's where quad XML and so on is going.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Okay, let's stop there. Thank you very much, Stephen.